Scripture portions of the day. Week 45. Deuteronomy 16 to 21.
Deuteronomy 16, Septuagint. Observe the month of new corn, and thou shalt sacrifice the Passover to Jehovah thy Elohim, because in the month of the new corn thou camest out of Egypt by night. And thou shalt sacrifice the Passover to Jehovah thy Elohim, sheep and oxen in the place which Jehovah thy Elohim shall choose to have his name called upon it. Thou shalt not eat leaven with it. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread with it, bread of affliction, because you came forth out of Egypt in haste, that you may remember the day of your coming forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of your life. Leaven shall not be seen in thee in all thy borders for 7 days, and there shall be none left of the flesh, which thou shalt sacrifice at even on the first day until the morning. Thou shalt not have the power to sacrifice the Passover in any of the cities which Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee, but in the place which Jehovah thy Elohim shall choose to have his name called there thou shalt sacrifice the Passover at even at the setting of the sun, at the time when thou came out of Egypt. And thou shalt boil and roast and eat it in the place which Jehovah thy Elohim shall choose, and thou shalt return in the morning, and go to thy house. 6 days shall you eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day is a holiday, a feast of Jehovah thy Elohim. Thou shalt not do it at any work, save what must be done by any one. 7 weeks shalt thou remember thyself. When thou hast begun to put the sickle to the corn, thou shalt begin the number 7 weeks. And thou shalt keep the feast of weeks to Jehovah thy Elohim, according as thy hand has the power in many things, as Jehovah thy Elohim shall give thee. And thou shalt rejoice before Jehovah thy Elohim, thou and thy son and thy daughter, thy maidservants, their maidservants, and the manservants, and the Levite, and the stranger, the orphan, the widows, which dwells amongst you, in whatsoever place Jehovah thy Elohim shall choose, that his name shall be called there. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and thou shalt observe and do these commands. Thou shalt keep for thyself the feast of tabernacles 7 days, when thou gatherest in thy produce, and thy corn floor, and thy winepress. And thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, thou and thy son and thy daughter, thy manservant and their maidservant, and the Levite, and the stranger, and the orphan, and the widows that is in thy cities. 7 days you shall keep the feast of Jehovah thy Elohim in the place which Jehovah thy Elohim shall choose for himself. And if Jehovah thy Elohim shall bless thee in all thy fruits, and in every work of thy hand, then thou shalt rejoice. 3 times in the year shall all thy males appear before Jehovah thy Elohim in the place which Jehovah shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and the feast of weeks, and the feast of tabernacles. Thou shalt not appear before Jehovah thy Elohim empty. Each one according to his ability, according to the blessings of Jehovah thy Elohim which he has given thee. Thou shalt make for thyself judges and officers in the city, and Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee in thy tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. They shall not wrest judgment, nor favor persons, nor receive a gift, for gifts blind the eyes of the wise, and pervert the words of the righteous. Thou shalt justly pursue justice, that you may live, and go in and inherit the land, which Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee. Thou shalt not plant for thyself a grove. Thou shalt not plant for thyself any tree near the altar of thy Elohim. Thou shalt not make for thyself a pillar, which Jehovah thy Elohim hates. Deuteronomy 17, Septuagint. Thou shalt not sacrifice to Elohim Jehovah thy Elohim a calf or sheep, in which there is a blemish or an evil thing, for it is an abomination to Jehovah thy Elohim. And if there should be found in you any of thy cities, which Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee, a man or woman who shall not do that which is evil before Jehovah thy Elohim, so that to transgress his covenant, And they should go and serve other gods, and worship them, the sun, of the moon, any of the host of heaven, which he commanded thee not to do, and to be told thee, and thou shalt have inquired diligently. And behold, the thing really took place. This abomination has been done in Israel. Then shalt thou bring out the man, or that woman, and ye shall stone them with stones, and they shall die. He shall die on the testimony of 2 to 3 witnesses. A man who is put to death shall not be put to death for 1 witness. And the hand of the witnesses shall be upon him among the first to put him to death, and the hand of the people at the last. So shalt thou remove the evil one from amongst yourselves. It is a matter too hard for thee in judgment, between blood and blood, and between cause and cause, between stroke and stroke, and between contradiction and contradiction, matters of judgment in your cities. Then thou shalt rise and go into the place which Jehovah thy Elohim has chosen, and thou shalt come to the priests of the Levites, and to the judge who has been in those days, and they shall search out the matter, and report the judgment to thee. And thou shalt act according to the things which they shall report to thee out of the place which Jehovah thy Elohim shall choose. And thou shalt observe all to do whatever thou hast been by the law appointed to thee. Thou shalt do according to the law and to the judgment which they shall declare to thee. Thou shalt not swerve to the right hand or to the left from any sentence which they shall report to thee. And the man whosoever shall act in haughtiness, so as not to hearken to the priest who stands to minister in the name of Jehovah thy Elohim, or to judge who shall preside in those days, that man shall die. Thou shalt remove the evil one out of Israel. And all the people shall hear and fear, and shall no more commit impiety. And when thou shalt enter into the land which Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee, and to inherit it, and dwell in it, and shall say, I will set a ruler over me, and also other nations around about me. Thou shalt surely set over me the ruler that Jehovah Elohim shall choose. Of thy brethren thou shalt set over thee a ruler. Thou shalt not have the power to set over thee a stranger, because he is not thy brother. For he shall not multiply to himself horses, and she shall by no means turn to the people back to Egypt, lest he should multiply himself horses. For Jehovah said, You shall not no more return back that way. And he shall not multiply to himself wives, lest his heart turn away, and he shall not multiply to himself silver and gold. When he shall be established in his government, then he shall write for himself a reputation of the law into a book by the hands of the priests and Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear Jehovah thy Elohim, and keep all the commandments, to observe these ordinances, that his heart be not lifted up above his brethren, and he depart not from the commandments of the hands or to the left or the right, that he and his sons may reign long in his dominion among the children of Israel. Deuteronomy 18, Septuagint. The priests, the Levites, even the whole tribe of Levi shall have no part nor inheritance of Israel. The burnt offerings of Jehovah are their inheritance, and they shall eat them. And they shall have no inheritance amongst their brethren. Jehovah himself is their portion, as he had said to him. And this is due to the high priests of the things coming from the people, of those who offer sacrifice, whether it be a calf or a sheep, or they shall give the shoulder of the priests, the cheek, and other intestines. And the first fruits, and thy corn, and thy wine, and thy oil, they shall give to him the first fruits of the fleeces of the sheep. Because Jehovah has chosen him out of all the tribes, to stand before Jehovah thy Elohim, to minister and to bless his name, himself and his sons amongst the children of Israel. And if a Levite comes from one of the cities of all the children of Israel, where he dwells himself, according to the mind of desire, to the place which he shall have chosen, he shall minister to the name of Jehovah and his Elohim, and to all his brethren, the Levites, who stand there present before Jehovah thy Elohim. And he shall eat all allocated portions, besides the sale of his hereditary property. And when they shall have enough, enter into the land which Jehovah the Elohim gives thee, thou shalt not lean according to the abominations of the nations. There shall be not found in thee one who purges his son or daughter with fire, one who uses divination, who deals with omens and augury, a sorcerer employing incantations, one who was with him a divining spirit and observer of signs, questioning the dead. For everyone that does these things is an abomination to Yehovah thy Elohim. For because of these abominations, Yehovah will destroy them from before thy face, and thou shalt be perfect before Yehovah thy Elohim. For all these things, all these nations, whose land thou shalt inherit, and they will listen to the omens and the divinations, but Yehovah thy Elohim has not permitted thee to do so. Yehovah thy Elohim shall raise up to thee a prophet from thy brethren like me, unto him shall you hear, according all that which is did desire of Yehovah thy Elohim in Horeb in the day of the assembly, saying, I will not hear again the voice of Yehovah thy Elohim, and he will not any more see this great fire, and so we all shall also die, should not die. And Yehovah said to me, they have spoken rightly all that they have said to thee. I will raise up them a prophet of their brethren, like thee, and I will put my words in their mouths, in his mouth, and he shall speak to them, and I shall as I command him. And whatever man shall not hearken to whatsoever the words the prophet shall speak in my name, I will take vengeance on him. But the prophet whosoever shall impiously speak in the name a word which have no commanded him to speak, and whosoever shall speak in that name of the other gods, that prophet shall die. But if you shall say in thy heart, how shall we know the words which Jehovah has spoken? And whatsoever words the prophet shall speak in the name of Jehovah, and they shall not come true, and not come to pass. This is the thing which Jehovah has not spoken. That prophet has spoken wickedly, and he shall not spare him. Deuteronomy 19, Septuagint. And when Jehovah thy Elohim have destroyed the nation which Elohim gives thee, even the land, and ye shall inherit them, and dwell in their cities and in their houses, thou shalt separate for thyself 3 cities in the midst of the land which Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee. Take a survey of thy way, that shall divide the coasts of thy land, which Jehovah thy Elohim portions to thee, into 3 parts, and there shall be there a refuge for every manslayer. And this shall be the ordinances of the manslayer, who shall flee thither, and shall him live, whosoever shall have smitten his neighbor ignorantly, whereas he hated him not in times past. And so whosoever shall enter with his neighbor into a thicket to gather wood, into the hand of him that cuts wood, and the axe should be violently shaken, and the axe would fall off from the handle and light on his neighbor, and he shall die. He shall flee to one of these cities and live, lest the avenger of blood pursue after the slayer, because his heart is hot, and overtake him. In that way be too long and slay him, though there is to this man no sentence of death, because he hated him not in times past. Therefore I charge thee, saying, Thou shalt separate for thyself 3 cities, and if Jehovah shall enlarge the borders, as he swore to his fathers, and Jehovah shall give thee all the land which he said he would give to thy fathers, if thou hearken to do all the commands which I command thee this day, to love Jehovah thy Elohim, to walk in his ways continually, thou shalt add for thyself yet 3 cities to these 3 cities. So innocent blood shall not be split into the land which Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee to inherit, and there shall not be in thee one guilt of blood. But if there should be in thee a man hating his neighbor, he should lay wait for him, and rise up against him, and smite him, that he die. He should flee to one of these cities. Then shall the elders of the city send and take him thence, and shall deliver him into the hands of the avengers of blood, and he shall die. And thy eye shall not spare him, so that thou purge innocent blood from Israel, and it shall be well with thee. Thou shalt not move the landmarks of your neighbor, which thy father has set as an inheritance, and which thou hast obtained in the share of the land which Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee to inherit. One witness shall not stand and testify against a man in iniquity of any, for any fault, for any sin which he commit, by the mouth of 2 witnesses. By the mouth of 3 witnesses shall every word be established. And if an unjust witness shall rise up against a man, alleging iniquity against him, then shall the 2 men between whom the controversy is stand before Jehovah, and before the priests, and before the judges, who may be in those days. And the judges shall make diligent inquiry, and behold, if an unjust witness was borne unjust testimony, and has stood up against his brother, then shall you do as wickedly devised, as to do against the brother, and thou shalt remove the evil from thyself. And the rest shall hear and fear, and do not do more according to the evil things in the midst of you. Thou shalt not spare him, thou shalt exact life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, and hand for hand, foot for foot. Deuteronomy 20, Septuagint. And if thou shouldest go forth to war against thine enemies, and shouldest see horse and rider and people numerous than themselves, and thou shalt not be afraid of them, for Jehovah thy Elohim is with thee, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt. And it shall come to pass, whenever you shall draw nigh to battle, that the priest shall draw nigh, and speak to the people, and shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, you are going this day to battle against your enemies. Let not your heart faint, fear not, neither be confounded, neither turn aside from their face. For it is Jehovah thy Elohim who advances with you, to fight with you against your enemies, and to save you. And the scribe shall speak to the people, saying, What man is he that has built a new house, and has not dedicated it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the war, and then the other man dedicate it. And what man is he that has planted a vineyard, and not been made merry with it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle, another man be made merry with it. And what man is he that has been betrothed to a wife, and has not taken her? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man take her. And the scribe shall speak further to the people, and say, What man is he that fears and is cowardly in his heart? Let him go and return to his house, lest he make the heart of his brother fail as his own. It shall come to pass, when the scribe shall have ceased speaking to the people, that they shall appoint generals of the armies to be leaders of the people. And if they shall draw nigh to the city to overcome them by war, then call them out peaceably. If then they should answer peaceably to them, and open to thee, it shall be that all the people found in it be tributary and subject to thee. But if they will not hearken to thee, but wage war against thee, thou shalt invest it, until Jehovah thy Elohim shall deliver it in thy hands, and thou shalt smite every male with it in the edge of the sword, except the women and the stuff and all the cattle. Whosoever shall be in the city, and all the plunder you should take spoil for thyself, and shall eat all the plunder of thine enemies from Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee. Thus shalt thou do all the cities that are far off from thee, not being of the cities of the nations which Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee to inherit their land. Of these ye shall not take any alive, but ye shall surely cause them, the Chetite, and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Perizzite, and the Evite, and the Jebusite, and the Girgasite, as Jehovah thy Elohim commanded thee, that they may not teach you to do all their abominations which they did to their gods, so they would sin before Jehovah your Elohim. And thou shouldest besiege a city many days to prevail against it by war to take it. Thou shalt not destroy its trees by applying an iron tool to them, but thou shalt eat of it, and shalt not cut it down. Is the tree that is in the field of man to enter before thee into the work of the siege? But the tree which thou knowest to be not fruit-bearing, this thou shalt destroy and cut down. Thou shalt construct a mount against the city, and make war against it, until it be delivered up.
Deuteronomy 21. 1. And if one be found slain with the sword in the land, which Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee to inherit, having fallen in the field, and they do not know who has smitten him. 2. Thine elders and thy judges shall come forth, and shall measure the distances of the cities round about the slain man. 3. And it shall be that the city which is nearest to the slain man, the elders of that city shall take a heifer of the herd, which has not labored, and which has not borne a yoke. 4. And the elders of that city shall bring down the heifer into a rough valley, which has not been tilled and is not sown, and they shall slay the heifer in the valley. 5. And the priests the Levites shall come, because Jehovah Elohim has chosen them to stand by him, and to bless in his name, and by their word shall every controversy and every stroke be decided. 6. And all the elders of that city, who draw nigh to the slain men, shall wash their hands over the head of the heifer which was slain in the valley. 7. and they shall answer and say, Our hands have not shed this blood, and our eyes have not seen it. 8. Be merciful to thy people Israel, whom thou hast redeemed, O Jehovah, that innocent blood may not be charged on thy people Israel, and the blood shall be atoned for to them. 9. And thou shalt take away innocent blood from among you, if thou shouldest do that which is good and pleasing before Jehovah thy Elohim. 10. And if when thou goest out to war against thine enemies, Jehovah thy Elohim should deliver them into thine hands, and thou shouldest take their spoil. 11. And shouldest see among the spoil a woman beautiful in countenance, and shouldest desire her, and take her to thyself for a wife. 12. And shouldest bring her within thine house, then shalt thou shave her head, and pare her nails. 13. And shalt take away her garments of captivity from off her, and she shall abide in thine house, and shall bewail her father and mother the days of a month, and afterwards thou shalt go into her and dwell with her, and she shall be thy wife. 14. And it shall be if thou do not delight in her, thou shalt send her out free, and she shall not by any means be sold for money, thou shalt not treat her contemptuously, because thou hast humbled her. 15. And if a man have two wives, the one loved and the other hated, and both the loved and the hated should have borne him children, and the son of the hated should be firstborn. 16. Then it shall be that whensoever he shall divide by inheritance his goods to his sons, he shall not be able to give the right of the firstborn to the son of the loved one, having overlooked the son of the hated, which is the firstborn. 17. But he shall acknowledge the firstborn of the hated one to give to him double of all things which shall be found by him, because he is the first of his children, and to him belongs the birthright. 18. And if any man has a disobedient and contentious son, who hearkens not to the voice of his father and the voice of his mother, and they should correct him, and he should not hearken to them. 19. Then shall his father and his mother take hold of him, and bring him forth to the elders of his city, and to the gate of the place. 20. And they shall say to the men of their city, This our son is disobedient and contentious, he hearkens not to our voice, he is a reveler and a drunkard. 21. And the men of his city shall stone him with stones, and he shall die, and thou shalt remove the evil one from yourselves, and the rest shall hear and fear. 22. And if there be sin in any one, and the judgment of death be upon him, and he be put to death, and ye hang him on a tree. 23. His body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but ye shall by all means bury it in that day, for every one that is hanged on a tree is cursed of Elohim, and ye shall by no means defile the land which Jehovah thy Elohim gives thee for an inheritance.
Ezekiel 45 to 48.
Ezekiel 45. And when you measure the land for inheritance, you shall set apart firstfruits to Jehovah, a holy space of the land, in length 25,000 reeds, and breadth 20,000, and it shall be holy in thy borders round about. And there shall be a sanctuary out of this, 500 reeds in length, by 500 in breadth, a square round about, and there shall be a vacant space beyond this, of 50 cubits round about. And out of this measure shalt thou measure the length 25,000, and the breadth 20,000, and it shall be a holy of holies. And of the land shall be a portion for the priests that minister in the holy place. And it shall be for them that draw nigh to minister to Jehovah, and it shall be to them a place for houses set apart for their sacred office. The length shall be 25,000, and the breadth 20,000, and the Levites that attend the house, they shall have cities dwell in for their possession. And you shall appoint for the possession of the city 5,000 in breadth, and in length 25,000, after the manner of the firstfruits of the holy portion. They shall be for all the house of Israel. And the prince shall have a portion out of this, and out of this there shall be a portion of the firstfruits of the sanctuary. And for the possession of the city, in front of the firstfruits of the sanctuary, in front of the possession of the city eastward, and from the western parts eastward, and the length shall be equal to one of the parts of the western borders, and the length shall be the eastern borders of the land. And he shall have it as a possession in Israel, and the princes of Israel shall no more oppress my people. For the house of Israel shall inherit the land according to their tribes. Thus saith Jehovah Elohim. Let it be suffice you, ye princes of Israel. Remove injustice and misery. Execute judgment and justice. Take away oppression from my people, saith Jehovah Elohim. You shall have a just balance, and a just measure, and just conics for measure. In like manner there shall be one conics as a measure of capacity. The tenth of a gomer shall be the conics, and the tenth of a gomer shall be in fair proportion to the gomer, and the weight shall be 20 oboli. Your pound shall be 5 shekels, 15 shekels, and 50 shekels. And these are the first fruits which you shall offer, a sixth part of a gomer of wheat, and a sixth part of it shall consist of an ephah of a cor of barley. And they shall give as the appointed measure of oil, 1 bath, or oil out of the 10 tribes, for a 10th bath is a gomer. And 1 sheep for the flock out of 10, an oblation from the tribes of Israel for sacrifices, and a whole burnt offerings, and a peace offerings, to make atonement for you, saith Jehovah Elohim. And all the people shall give these first fruits to the prince of Israel. And through the princes shall there be offered the whole burnt offerings, and the meat offerings, and the drink offerings, and the feasts, and the new moons, and the Sabbaths, and the feasts of the house of Israel. And he shall offer the sin offerings, and the meat offerings, and the whole burnt offerings, and the peace offerings, to make atonement for the house of Israel. Thus saith Jehovah Elohim, in the first month, on the first day of the month, ye shall take a calf without blemish out of the herd to make an atonement for the holy place. And when the priest shall take the blood of the atonement and put it into the thresholds of the house, and upon the 4 corners of the temple, and upon the altar, upon the thresholds of the gate of the inner court. Thus shalt thou do in the 7th month. On the first day of the month thou shalt take a reed from each one, and ye shall have an atonement for the house. And in the first month, the 14th day of the month, ye shall have the feast of the Passover. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. And the princes shall offer it in that day, a calf for a sin offering for himself, and for the house, and for all the people of the land. For the 7th days of the feast he shall offer a whole burnt offerings to Jehovah, 7 calves, 7 rams, without blemish, daily for the 7 days. A kid of the goats, daily for the sin offering, and the meat offering. And thou shalt prepare a cake for the calf, and the cakes for the ram, and a hin of oil for the cake. And in the 7th month of the 15th day of the month thou shalt sacrifice in the feast of the same way 7 days, as they sacrificed sin offerings, and the whole burnt offerings, and the freewill offerings, and the oil. Ezekiel 46. Septuagint. Thus saith Jehovah Elohim, the gate that which is in the inner court, that looks steward, and should be shut the 6 working days. Let it be opened on the Sabbath day, and it shall be opened in the day of the new moon. And the prince shall enter in by the way of the porch of the inner gate, and there shall stand at the entrance of the gate, and the priest shall prepare the whole burnt offerings, and the peace offerings, and he shall worship in the entrance of the gate. Then shall he come forth, but the gate shall be put shut that evening. And the people of the land shall worship in the entrance of the gate, both on the Sabbaths and on the new moons, before Jehovah. And the prince shall offer whole burnt offerings to Jehovah on the Sabbath day, 6 lambs without blemish, and a ram without blemish, and a free will offering, a meat offering for the ram, the meat offering for the lambs, and a gift of his hands, and a hin of oil for the meat offerings. And on that day of the new moon a calf without blemish, 6 lambs, and there shall be a ram without blemish. And the meat offering of the ram shall be as a meat offering of the calf, as a freewill offering. And for the lambs, according to the hand can furnish. And there shall be a hin of oil for the cake. And when the prince goes in, he shall go in by the way of the porch of the gate, and he shall go forth in the way of the gate. And whenever the people of the land shall go in before Jehovah at the feast, He that goes in by the way of the north gate to worship shall go forth in the way of the south gate. And he shall goes in the way of the south gate shall go the way of the north gate. He shall not return by the gate which he had entered, but he shall go forth opposite it. And the prince shall enter into the midst of them, and they shall go in. And when they go forth, he shall go forth. And the feasts in the general assemblies, the freewill obligations, shall be a meat offering for the calf, and a meat offering for the ram, and for the lambs at his hand can furnish a hin of oil for the meat offerings. And if the prince shall prepare a thanksgiving of a whole burnt offering to Jehovah, and should open himself the gate looking eastward, and offer whole burnt offerings, and his peace offerings, and he does on the Sabbath day when he goes out, and shall shut the doors when he goes out. And when he prepares daily the whole burnt offering to Jehovah, a lamb for a year old, for a blemish, in the morning he shall prepare it. And he shall prepare a freewill offering for the morning, and the sixth part of a measure of flour, and a third part of hin of oil, to mix therein of fine flour, as a freewill offering to Jehovah, a perpetual ordinance. And you shall prepare a lamb, a freewill offering, and the oil in the morning, and for a perpetual burnt offering. Thus saith Jehovah Elohim, if the prince shall give a gift to one of these sons out of his inheritance, this shall be to his sons a possession, as an inheritance. But if he give a gift as one of his servants, then it shall belong to him until the year of release, and then he shall restore it to the prince. But out of the inheritance of his sons the possession shall continue with them. And the prince shall by no means take out the inheritance of the people, to oppress them. He shall give an inheritance to his sons out of his own possession, that my people may not be scattered, every one from his possession. And he brought me into the entrance of the place behind the gate, into the chamber of the sanctuary belonging to the priests, that looked towards the north. And behold, there was a place set apart. And he said to me, this is the place where the priest shall boil the trespass offerings and the sin offerings, and there shall be they bake the meat offerings always, so as to not carry them out in the outer court, to sanctify the people. And he brought me into the outer court, and led me to round upon the four sides of the court. And behold, there was a court on each side of the court. And every side of the court, even a court for all four sides. Each little court belonging to the court was in its length 40 cubits, and in breadth 30 cubits. And there was one measure to the four. And there were chambers in them round about the four, and cooking places formed under the chambers round about. And he said to me, these are the cooks' houses, where they serve the house, and shall boil the sacrifices of the people. Ezekiel 47, Septuagint. And he brought me to the entrance of the house, and behold, water issued from under the porch eastward. In front of the house looked eastward, and the water came down from the right side, and the south to the altar. And he brought me out by the way, the northern gate, and led me round by the way outside the gate of the court that looks eastward, and behold, water came down from the right side. And in the direction in which a man went forth opposite, there was a measuring line, and in his hand he measured 1,000 cubits with the measure. And he passed through the water. It was water of a fountain. And again he measured 1,000, and passed through the water, and the water was up to his thighs. And again he measured 1,000, and he passed through the water of the loins. And again he measured 1,000, and he could not pass through, for the water rose as a torrent which men cannot pass over. And he said to me, hast thou seen this, son of man? Then he brought me, and he led me back to the brink of the water. And as I was returned, and behold, on the brink of the river there was a very many trees on this side and on that side. And he said to me, this is the water that goes forth to Galilee, that lies eastward, and is gone down to Arabia, and has reached as far as the sea to the outlet of the water, and it shall heal the waters. And it shall come to pass that whatever animal or living or moving creature, all of which the river shall come, shall live, and there shall be very many fish, and this water shall go hither, and it shall heal them, and they shall live. Everything on which the river shall come shall live. And fishers shall stand there in the En-Gagdin and the En-Galim, and it shall be as a place spread out with but nets. And it shall be distinct, and the fishes thereon shall be as the fishes of the great sea, a very great multitude. But the outlet of the water, and the turn of it, where it overflows its banks, they shall not heal at all. They are given to salt. And every fruit tree shall grow by the river, even on the bank of it on its side, and on that side, and they shall not decay it, and neither shall their fruit fail. And they shall bring forth the firstfruits of their early crop, and these their waters come forth from the sanctuary, and the fruit shall be for meat, and their foliage for the health. And thus says Jehovah Elohim, Thou shalt inherit these borders of land. They are given by lot to the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, and ye shall inherit it, each according to his brother's portion, even the land concerning which I lifted up my hand to give it to your fathers. And this land shall fail by you by lot. And these are the borders of the land which lies northward, the great sea that comes down, and divides the entrance of the Amasamladam, Amam-Mabzera, and Ibram-Ma'am, between the coasts of Damascus and the coasts of Emathi, and the habitations of Saunan, which places above the coasts of the Aral-Nitis. And these are the borders of the sea, the inhabitants of Anan, and the coasts of Damascus, and the northern coasts, and the eastern coast between the Laurantitis and Damascus, and the lands of Galaad, and the land of Israel. And the Jordan divides the sea in the east and of the city of the palm trees, and these are the eastern coasts. And the southern and the southwestern coasts are these from Thamin, and the city of the palm trees, and the water of Marimoth and Kadem, reaching forth from the great sea. This is part of the south and southwest. This part of the great sea forms a border, till one comes opposite of the entrance of Emath, even as far as the entrance thereof. These are the parts west of Emath. So ye shall divide the land to them, even to the tribes of Israel. Ye shall cast lot upon it, for yourselves and the strangers that sojourn in your midst of you. And you have begotten children in the midst of you, and they shall be to you as natives amongst the children of Israel, and they shall eat with you in their inheritance in the midst of the tribes of Israel. And they shall be in the tribe of proselytes. Amongst the proselytes there is with them, they shall give them an inheritance, saith Jehovah Elohim. Ezekiel 48, Septuagint. And these are the names of the tribes of the northern comer. And according to the sides of the descent that draws a line to the entrance of Mamath, and the palace of Elim, and the border of Damascus northward, on the sides of Emath, the palace. And they shall have the eastern parts, as far as the sea, for Dan, one portion. And from the borders of Dan eastward, as far as the east-west sea coast, for Asher, one. And from the borders of Asher, for the eastern parts, as far as the west coast, for Nephthalim, one. And the borders of Nephthalim, from the east as far as the west coast, for Manasseh, one. And from the borders of Manasseh, and the eastern parts as far as the east-west coast, for Ephraim, one. And from the borders of Ephraim, from the eastern parts of the west coast, for Reuben, one. And from the borders of Reuben, from the western parts as far as the west coast, for Judah, one. And for the borders of Judah and the eastern parts shall be as an offering of first fruits, in the breadth 25,000 reeds, and the length of it, in the measures of the east coast, even to the western parts. The sanctuary shall be in the midst of them. As the first fruits which they shall offer to Jehovah, it shall be in length 25,000, in the breadth 25,000. And out of it shall be the first fruits, the holy things of the priests, northward 25,000, and towards the west 10,000, and southern 25,000, and the mountain and the sanctuary shall begin in the midst of it. For the priests, for the consecrated sons of Zadok, you who keep the charges of the house, who erred not in the error of the children of Israel, as the Levites erred. And the first fruits shall be given to them out of the first fruits of the land, even the most holy portion of the borders of Levites. And the Levites shall have a part next to the borders of the priests, In length 25,000, and the breadth 10,000, and the whole length shall be 25,000, and the breadth 20,000. No part of it shall be sold, nor measure as for sale, neither shall the first fruits of the land be taken away, for they are the holy to Jehovah. But concerning 5,000, and the remaining in the breadth of the 25,000, there shall be a suburb to the city of the dwelling, and for the space before it, and the city shall be in the midst thereof. And these shall be in its dimensions: from the northern side 4,500, and from the southern side 4,500, and from the eastern side 4,500, and the western side they shall measure 4,500. And there shall be a space in the city northward 250, and the southward 250, and eastward 250, and westward 250. And the remainder of the length that it was next to the first fruits of the first portion, the holy portion, shall be 10,000 eastward, and 10,000 westward, and they shall be for the first fruits of the sanctuary. And the fruits thereof shall be the bread to them that labor for the city. And they that labor for the city shall labor for it out of the tribes of Israel. The whole offering shall be square 25,000, and 25,000. You shall separate again part of it, and the first fruits of the sanctuary, from the possession of the city. And the prince shall have the remainder of this side and on that side, and the first fruits of the sanctuary. And there shall be a possession of that city, for 25,000 cubits in length, to the eastern and western borders, for 25,000 to the western borders, next to the portion of the prince. And the first fruits of the holy things of the sanctuary of the house shall be in the midst of it. And there should be a portion taken from the Levites, from the possession of the city, of the midst of the princes, between the border of Judah and the border of Benjamin, and it shall be a portion of the princes. And as for the rest of the tribes, the eastern parts of, as far as the western Benjamin, shall have one portion. And for the borders of Benjamin, and for the eastern parts of the western, Simeon one. And for the borders of Simeon, for the eastern parts of the western, Issachar one. And from the borders of Issachar to the eastern parts of the western, Zebulun one. And for the parts of Zebulun in the east to the western parts, Gad one. And for the borders of Gad, from the eastern parts to the western parts, his coast shall even be for Laman, in the water of Berma, Cadiz, an inheritance unto the great sea. For this is the land which ye shall divide by lots to the tribes of Israel, and these are the portions, saith YEHOVAH Elohim. And these are the going outs of the city northward, 4,500 by measure. And the gates of the city shall be after the names of the tribes of Israel. 3 gates northward, the gate of Reuben 1, the gate of Judah 1, and the gate of Levi 1. And the eastward 4,500, and 3 gates, and the gates of Joseph, and the gate of Benjamin 1, and the gate of Dan 1. And southward and 4,500 by measure, and 3 gates gave to Simeon 1, and the gates of Issachar 1, and the gates of Zebulun 1. And the westward and 4,500 by measure, and 3 gates, the gate of Gad 1, the gate of Asher 1, and the gate of Naphtali 1, and the circumference 18,000 measures. And the name of the city, from the day it shall be finished, shall be the name thereof.
Daniel 1-5.
Daniel 1. Septuagint. In the 3rd year reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Babylon, to Jerusalem, and besieged it. And Jehovah gave into his hand Joachim, king of Judah, and part of the vessels of the house of Elo-heem. He brought them into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. He brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And the king told Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring in some of the captive children of Israel, and the seed of the kingdom, and of their princes, young men, whom was no blemish, and beautiful in appearance, and skilled in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, acquainted with prudence, who had ability to stand in the house before the king. And the king gave commandment to teach them the learning and the language of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them daily portion of the king's table, and from the wine which he drank, and gave orders to nourish them 3 years, and afterwards they should stand before the king. Now these were among them the children of Judah: Daniel, and Ananiah, and Azarias, and Mishael. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them names to Daniel: Belshazzar, and Ananias, and Shadrach, and Mishael, and Meshach, and to Azarias, Abednego. Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's food table, nor with the wine of his drink, and he entreated the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now Elo-heem brought Daniel into the favor and compassion of the chief of eunuchs. And the chief of eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your meat and your drink, lest he see your countenance gloomy in the comparison of the young men of your equals. He shall endanger my head to the king. And Daniel said to Amasad, whom the chief of the eunuchs has appointed over Daniel, Ananias, Mishael, and Azarias, provoke now the servants 10 days. Prove now, and let them give us pulse, and we shall eat, and let us drink water. And our countenances will be seen by thee, and the countenances of the children that eat the king's table, and deal with thy servants according to what you see. And he hearkened unto them, and approved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days their countenances appeared fair and stouter in flesh, and the children that fed at the king's table. So Amalsad took away their supper and the wine of their drink, and gave them pulse. And as you see 4 children, Elo-heem gave them understanding and prudence and learning, wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. And at the end of the days, after which the king had ordered to bring them in, then the chief of eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king spoke with them, and there were not found one of them at all like any of Daniel, or Ananias, and Mishael, and Azarias. And they stood before the king. In every matter of wisdom and knowledge, wherein the king questioned them, he found them 10 times wiser than all the enchanters and sorcerers that were with him in all his kingdom. And Daniel continued the 1st year of King Cyrus. Daniel 2, Septuagint. In the 2nd year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed a dream, and his spirit was amazed, and his sleep departed from him. And the king gave orders to call the enchanters, the magicians, and the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, to declare the king his dreams. And they came and stood before the king. And the king said to them, I have dreamed, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. And the Chaldeans spoke to the king in the Syrian language, saying, O king, live forever. Do thou tell the dream to thy servants, and we will declare the interpretation. The king answered the Chaldeans, The thing has departed from me. If ye do not make known to me the dream and the interpretation, you shall be destroyed, and your houses shall be spoiled. But if you make known to me the dream and the interpretation thereof, you shall receive of me gifts, presents, and much honor. Only tell me the dream and the interpretation thereof. And they answered the 2nd time and said, Let the king tell the dream to his servants, and we will declare the interpretation. And the king answered and said, I verily know that you are trying to gain time, because you see that the thing is gone from me. If then you do not tell me the dream, I know that you have concerning to utter before me a false and corrupt tale. Until the time shall come to pass, tell me my dream, and I shall know what ye will also declare to me the interpretation thereof. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, There is no man upon the earth that shall be able to make known the king's matter, for as much as no great king or ruler shall ask a question of the enchanters, magicians, or Chaldeans. For the question which the king asks is difficult, and there is no one else who shall answer it before the king, but the gods, who dwells not with any flesh. But the king is raged and angered, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of the Babylon. So the decree went forth, and they began to slay the wise men. And they saw Daniel and his fellows to slay them. And Daniel answered with counsel and prudence to Arioch, the captain of the royal guard, who has gone forth to kill the wise men of Babylon. Chief magistrates of the king, therefore, had the peremptory command proceeding from the king. So Arioch made known the matter to Daniel. And Daniel interpreted the king to give him time, that he might thus declare the king the interpretation thereof. So Daniel went into his house and made known the matter to Ananias and Mishael and Azarias, his friends. And they sought mercies from Elo-heem of heaven concerning the mystery, that Daniel and his friends might not perish from the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision in the night. Daniel blessed Elo-heem of heaven and said, May the name of Elo-heem be blessed from everlasting to everlasting, for wisdom and understanding for his. And he changes times and seasons, he appoints kings and removes them, giving wisdom to the wise and prudence to them that have understanding. He develops, he reveals deep secrets, matters, knowing what is in darkness, and the light is with him. I give thanks to thee. Praise thee, O Elo-heem of the fathers, for thou hast given me wisdom, power, and hast made known to me the things which we have asked of thee, and thou hast made known to the king's wisdom and the vision. Daniel came to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon, but bring to me before the king, and I will declare the interpretation of the king. And Arioch in haste brought Daniel before the king, and said to him, I have found a man of the children of the captivity of Judah, who will declare the interpretation to the king. And the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, canst thou declare me the dream which I saw, and the interpretation thereof? And Daniel answered before the king and said, Mystery, which the king asks, the explanation is not in the power of the wise men, magicians, enchanters, soothsayers declare to the king. But there is an Elo-heem in heaven revealed mysteries, and he shall be made known to the king Nebuchadnezzar, that thing which comes to pass in the last days. The dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are as follows. O king, thy thoughts upon the bed arose to what must come to pass thereafter, and he reveals mysteries and made known to thee what must come to pass. Moreover, this mystery has not been revealed to me to reason of wisdom which is in me beyond others living, but for the sake of making known the interpretation to the king, that thou mightest know that the thoughts of thine heart. O king, sawest and behold an image. The image was great, and the appearance is excellent, standing before the face, and in the form of it was terrible. It was an image, the head of which was of gold, and the hands and the breasts and the arms of silver, and the belly and thighs of brass, and its legs of iron, its feet part iron, part earthenware. Thou sawest until a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and it was smote the image from his feet of iron and earthenware, and utterly reduced them to powder. And once for all, the earthenware, the iron, the brass, the silver, the gold, were ground to powder, and became chaff in the summer's threshing floor. And the violence of the wind carried them away, and no place was found for them. And the stone that which was smitten, the image, became a great mountain, and was filling the earth. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, whom Elo-heem of heaven has given a power and strong and honorable kingdom. In every place where the children of Israel men dwell, you have given into thine hands the wild beasts of the field and the birds of the sky, fish of the sea, and he has made thee Lord of all. Thou art a head of gold, and after these things arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and the third kingdom, which is brass, shall have dominion over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom, which is strong as iron beats to iron, powder substitutes all things, so shall it be powder and a subdue. And thereas sawest the feet of the toes, part of the earthenware and part of iron, and the kingdom shall be divided. And ye shall there be in the length of iron, and sawest the kingdom of mixed iron with earthenware, and part of it shall be broken. Whereas thou saw the iron mixed with the earthenware, and it shall be mingled with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave together, for the iron does not mix itself with earthenware. And the days of those kings, Elo-heem Jehovah, shall be set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and his kingdom shall not be left to another. For it shall be beat to pieces and ground to powder, all the kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Whosoever has seen that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and it beat to pieces the earthenware, the iron and the brass, the silver, gold, great Elo-heem was made possible. and known to the king that must happen thereafter. And the dream is true, and the interpretation thereof sure. And then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and worshipped Daniel, and gave orders to him to offer him gifts and incense. And the king answered and said to Daniel, O truly your Elohim is the Elohim of gods, and Jehovah of kings, who reveals mysteries to those who would be able to reveal this mystery. And the king promoted Daniel and gave him a great honors and abundance in gifts, and set him in the whole province of Babylon, and made him chief satrap over the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel asked of the king, and he appeared, Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, over the fair of the province of Babylon, but Daniel was in the king's palace. Daniel 3, Septuagint. In the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar the king made a golden image. Its height was 60 cubits, its breadth was 6 cubits, and he set it up in the plain of Dura, and in the province of Babylon. And he set forth to gather the governors and the captains and the heads of the provinces, chiefs and princes, and those who were in authority, all the rulers and districts, to come to dedicate of the dedication of the image. So the heads of the provinces, the governors, the captains, the chiefs, and the great princes, and those who were in authority, and all rulers of districts, were gathered to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before the image. Then a herald cried out, To you it's commanded, ye peoples, tribes, and languages, at what hour you shall hear the sound of the trumpet, and pipe, and the harp, and sackbut, and psaltery, and every kind of music, and you shall fall down and worship the golden image which King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whosoever shall not fall down and worship, in the same hour he shall be cast in the burning fierce fury. And it came to pass, as the nations heard the sound of the trumpet, and the pipe, and the harp, and the sackcloth, and the psaltery, and every kind of music, all the nations, tribes, and languages fell down and worshipped the golden image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then came near Chaldeans, accusing the Jews of the king, saying, O king, live forever. For thou hast made a decree that every man should hear the sound of the trumpet, and pipe, and harp, sackbut, and psaltery, and all kinds of music, and they shall fall down and worship the golden image, shall be cast into the fiery furnace. There is a certain Jews whom thou hast appointed over the affairs of the provinces of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who have not obeyed the decree, O king, and they serve not thy gods, and worship not the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in wrath and anger, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they were brought before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that ye serve not my gods, and worship not the golden image which I have set up? Now then, if you be ready, whensoever you shall hear the sound of the trumpet, and pipe, and harp, and sackbut, and psaltery, and harmony, and every kind of music, that falls down and worship to the golden image that I have made. Well, but if you worship not, in that same hour you shall be cast in the burning fiery furnace. And who is the Elo-heem that shall deliver you out of your hand? Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, We have no need to answer thee concerning this matter. For our Elo-heem, whom we serve in the heavens, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will rescue us from thy hand, O king. But if not, be it known to thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the image which thou hast set up. And Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, and the form of his countenance was changed towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He gave orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than usual, until it shall burn to the utmost. And he commanded mighty men to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning furnace. Then those men were bound with their coats and caps and hose, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace, forasmuch as the king's word prevailed, and the furnace was made exceedingly hot. Then these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down in the midst of the burning furnace, and walked in the midst of the flame, singing praise to Elohim and blessings to Jehovah. Nebuchadnezzar heard them singing praises, and he wondered and rose up in haste, and said to his nobles, Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? And they said to the king, Yes, O king. And the king said, But I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and there was no harm happened to them, and the appearance of the 4th is like that of the son of Elohim. Then Nebuchadnezzar drew near to the door of the burning fiery furnace, and he said, Sidrach, Mesach, and Abednego, ye servants of the most high Elohim, proceed forth, and come hither. So Sidrach, Mesach, and Abednego came forth out of the midst of the fire, and then were assembled the satraps, and the captains, and the heads of provinces, and the royal princes, and they saw the men, and perceived that the fire had no power against their bodies, and the hair of their head was not burnt, and their coats were not scorched, nor was there a smell of fire upon them. And the king Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, Blessed be Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel to deliver his servants, because they trusted in him. They might have changed the king's words, and delivered their bodies to be burnt, that they may not serve or worship any god except their own Elohim. Wherefore I publish a decree, every people, tribe, language, that shall speak reproachfully against Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be destroyed, and their houses shall be plundered, because there is no other Elohim who shall be able to deliver us. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the provinces of Babylon, and advanced them, and gave them authority to rule over the Jews who were in his kingdom. Daniel 4, Septuagint. King Nebuchadnezzar, to all nations, tribes, and tongues, who dwell on the earth, peace be multiplied to you. It seemed good to me to declare to you the signs and wonders which the Most High Elohim has wrought with me. How great and mighty they are! His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his power to all generations. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was thriving in my house and prospering. I saw a vision, and it terrified me, and I was troubled on my bed. And the visions my head troubled me. And I made a decree to bring in before me all the wise men of Babylon, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. So the enchanters, magicians, soothsayers, and Chaldeans came in, and I told the dream before them, but they did not make known to me the interpretation thereof. Until Daniel came, whose name was Belshazzar, according to the name of my Elohim, who has within him the Holy Spirit of Elohim, to whom I said, O Belshazzar, chief of the enchanters, of whom I know that the Spirit of Elohim is in thee, and no mystery is too hard for thee. Hear the vision of my dream which I had, and tell me the interpretation of it. I had a vision upon my bed, and behold a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew large, strong, its heights reached the sky, and extent to the extremities of the whole earth. Its leaves were fair, its fruit abundant, and it was the meat for all, and under it the wild beasts in the field took shelter, and the birds of the sky lodged in the branches of it, and all flesh was fed it. I beheld in the night vision upon my bed, and behold, a watcher and a holy one came down from heaven, and cried aloud, and thus said, Cut down the tree, and pluck its branches, shake off its leaves, and scatter its fruits. Let the wild beasts be removed from under it, and the birds from its branches. Only leave this stump of its roots in the earth, and bind it with an iron and brass band, and it shall lie in the grass that is without, and in the dew heavens, and its portion shall be with the wild beasts and the grass of the field. And his heart shall be changed, that of a man, and the heart of the wild beast shall be given to him, and 7 times shall pass over him. The matter is by the decree of the watcher, and the demand is the word of the holy ones, that the living may know that Jehovah is most high over the kingdom of men, and he will give it to whomever he pleases, and it shall be set up over it that which is set at naught of men. This is the vision I, King Nebuchadnezzar, saw, and do thou, Belshazzar, declare the interpretation, for none of the wise men of the kingdom are able to show me the interpretation of it, but thou, Daniel, art able, for the Holy Spirit of Elohim is in thee. Then Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, was amazed about 1 hour, and his thoughts troubled him. And Belshazzar answered and said, My Lord, let the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation of it to thine enemies. The tree that thou sawest that grew large and strong, whose height reached to the sky and extended to all the earth, and whose leaves were flourishing, and its fruit abundant, and it shall be meat for all under the wild beasts lodged, and the birds of the sky took shelter in its branches. Is thyself, O king, for thou art grown great and powerful, and thy greatness has increased and reached to the heaven, and thy dominion to the ends of the earth. And whereas the king saw a watcher and a holy one come down from heaven, and he said, Strip the tree and destroy it. Only leave the stump and its roots in the ground, and bind it with band of iron and brass, and it shall lie in the grass, that is, without, and in the dew of heaven, and its portion shall be with the wild beasts, until 7 times is passed over it. This is the interpretation of it, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my lord the king. And they shall drive thee forth from men, and the dwelling shall be in the wild beasts, and they shall feed thee with grass as an ox, and thou shalt have thy lodging under the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over thee, until you know that the Most High is Elo-heem, Jehovah, of the kingdom of men, and will give it to whom he shall please. And whereas they said, Leave the stumps of the roots of the tree, thy kingdom abides sure to thee for the time that thou shalt know the power of heavens. Therefore, O king, let thy counsel please thee, and atone for thy sins by alms, and thy iniquities by compassion on the poor. It may be Elo-heem will be long-suffering to thy trespasses. All these things came upon Nebuchadnezzar, and after 12 months he walked in his palace in Babylon. The king answered and said, Is it not this great Babylon which I built for a royal residence, by the might of my power, and the honor of my glory? While the word was yet in the king's mouth, there came a voice from heaven saying to thee, King Nebuchadnezzar, they say, the kingdom has departed from thee. And they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwell shall be in the wild beasts of the field, and they shall feed thee with grass as an ox. 7 times shall pass thee over, until you know that the Most High is Elo-heem, and the kingdom of men, and he will give it to whomever he please. In the same hour the word was fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar, and he was driven forth from men, and he ate grass of the ox, and his body was bathed in the dew of heaven, until his hair was grown like lion's hair, and his nails were bird claws. At the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes to heaven, and my reason returned to me. I blessed the Most High, and praised him that lives forever, and gave him glory, for his dominion is everlasting dominion, and his kingdom lasts for all generations. And all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing, and he does according to his will in the army of heaven, and among the inhabitants of the earth, and there is none that shall withstand his power, and say to him, What hast thou done? At the same time my reason returned to me, and I came to my honor to my kingdom, and my natural form returned to me, and my princes and my nobles sought me, and I was established in my kingdom. More abundant majesty was added to me. Now therefore I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and greatly exalt and glorify the King of heaven, for this is all his works are true, and his paths are judgment, and all the walk in pride he shall be abased.
Daniel 5. 1. Baltasar the king made a great supper for his 1,000 nobles, and there was wine before the 1,000. 2. And Baltasar drinking gave orders as he tasted the wine, that they should bring the gold and silver vessels, which Nebuchadnezzar his father had brought forth from the temple in Jerusalem, that the king, and his nobles, and his mistresses, and his concubines, should drink out of them. 3. So the gold and silver vessels were brought which Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple of Elo-heem in Jerusalem, and the king, and his nobles, and his mistresses, and his concubines, drank out of them. 4. They drank wine, and praised the gods of gold, and of silver, and of brass, and of iron, and of wood, and of stone. 5. In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand, and wrote in front of the lamp on the plaster of the wall of the king's house, and the king saw the knuckles of the hand that wrote. 6. Then the king's countenance changed, and his thoughts troubled him, and the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one another. 7. And the king cried aloud to bring in the magicians, Chaldeans, and soothsayers, and he said to the wise men of Babylon, Whosoever shall read this writing, and make known to me the interpretation, shall be clothed with scarlet, and there shall be a golden chain upon his neck, and he shall be the 3rd ruler in my kingdom. 8. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known the interpretation to the king. 9. And King Baltasar was troubled, and his countenance changed upon him, and his nobles were troubled with him. 10. Then the queen came into the banquet house, and said, O king, live forever, let not thy thoughts trouble thee, and let not thy countenance be changed. 11. There is a man in thy kingdom, in whom is the spirit of Elohim, and in the days of thy father watchfulness and understanding were found in him, and King Nebuchadnezzar thy father made him chief of the enchanters, magicians, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. 12. For there is an excellent spirit in him, and sense and understanding in him, interpreting dreams as he does, and answering hard questions, and solving difficulties. It is Daniel, and the king gave him the name of Baltasar. Now then let him be called, and he shall tell thee the interpretation of the writing. 13. Then Daniel was brought in before the king, and the king said to Daniel, Art thou Daniel, of the children of the captivity of Judea, which the king my father brought? 14. I have heard concerning thee, that the spirit of Elohim is in thee, and that watchfulness and understanding and excellent wisdom have been found in thee. 15. And now, the wise men, magicians, and soothsayers, have come in before me, to read the writing, and make known to me the interpretation, but they could not tell it me. 16. And I have heard concerning thee, that thou art able to make interpretations. Now then if thou shalt be able to read the writing, and to make known to me the interpretation of it, thou shalt be clothed with purple, and there shall be a golden chain upon thy neck, and thou shalt be third ruler in my kingdom. 17. And Daniel said, before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself, and give the present of thine house to another, but I will read the writing, and will make known to thee the interpretation of it. 18. O king, the Most High Elohim gave to thy father Nebuchadnezzar a kingdom, and majesty, and honor, and glory. 19. And by reason of the majesty which he gave to him, all nations, tribes, and languages trembled and feared before him, whom he would he slew, and whom he would he smote, and whom he would he exalted, and whom he would he abased. 20. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was emboldened to act proudly, he was deposed from his royal throne, and his honor was taken from him. 21. And he was driven forth from men, and his heart was given him after the nature of wild beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild asses, and they fed him with grass as an ox, and his body was bathed with the dew of heaven, until he knew that the Most High Elohim is Jehovah of the kingdom of men, and will give it to whomsoever he shall please. 22. And thou accordingly, his son, O Baltasar, has not humbled thine heart before Elohim, knowest thou not all this? 23. And thou hast been exalted against Jehovah Elohim of heaven, and they have brought before thee the vessels of his house, and thou, and thy nobles, and thy mistresses, and thy concubines, have drunk wine out of them, and thou hast praised the gods of gold, and silver, and brass, and iron, and wood, and stone, which see not, and which hear not, and know not, and the Elohim in whose hand are thy breath, and all thy ways hast thou not glorified. 24. Therefore from his presence has been sent forth the knuckle of a hand, and he has ordered the writing. 25. And this is the ordered writing, main, thekel, fairs. 26. This is the interpretation of the sentence, main, Elohim has measured thy kingdom, and finished it. 27. Thekel, it has been weighed in the balance, and found wanting. 28. Fairs, thy kingdom is divided, and given to the Medes and Persians. 29. Then Baltasar commanded, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put the golden chain about his neck, and proclaimed concerning him that he was the third ruler in the kingdom. 30. In the same night was Baltasar the Chaldean king slain. 31. And Darius the Mede succeeded to the kingdom, being 62 years old.
John 17-21.
Proverbs 15. Septuagint. Anger slays even wise men, yet the submissive answer turns away wrath, but a grievous word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise knows what is good, but the mouth of the foolish tells evil things. The eyes of Jehovah behold both evil and good in every place, and a wholesome tongue is a tree of life, and he that keeps it will fulfill with understanding. A fool scorns his father's instructions, but he who keeps his commandments is more prudent. In abounding righteousness is great strength, but the ungodly shall utterly perish from the earth. In the houses of the righteous is much strength, but the fruits of the ungodly shall perish. The lips of the wise are bound by discretion, but the hearts of the foolish are not safe. Sacrifices of the ungodly are the abomination of Jehovah, but the prayers of them that walk honestly are acceptable with him. The ways of an ungodly man are an abomination to Jehovah, but he who loves those that follow after righteousness. The instructions of the simple is known by them that pass by, but they that hate reproofs die disgracefully. Hell and destruction are manifest to Jehovah. How shall not also be the hearts of the men? An instructed person will not love those that reprove him, neither will he associate with the wise. When the heart rejoices, the countenance is cheerful, but when it is in sorrow, the countenance is sad. An upright heart seeks discretion, but the mouth of the instructed will experience evils. The eyes of the wicked always look for evil things, but the good are always quiet. Better is a small portion of the fear of Jehovah than great treasure without the fear of Jehovah. Better is the entertainment of herbs with friendliness and kindness than the feast of calves and with enmity. A passionate man stirs up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeases even a rising one. A man slow to anger will extinguish quarrels, but an ungodly man would rather stir them up. The ways of sluggards are strewn with thorns, but those with the diligent are made smooth. A wise man gladdens his father, but a foolish man sneers at his mother. The ways of a foolish man are void of sense, but the wise man proceeds on his way aright. They that honor not counsels put off deliberation, but counsel abides in the hearts of counselors. A bad man will no means attend to counsel, neither will he say anything reasonable or good for the common weal. The thoughts of the wise are always a ways of life, and that he may turn aside and escape from hell. Jehovah pulls down the houses of scorners, but establishes the borders of the widow. An unrighteous thought is abomination to Jehovah, but the sayings of the pure are held in honor. A receiver of bribes destroys himself, but he that hates the receivings of bribes is safe. By alms and by faithful dealings sins are purged away, but by the fear of Jehovah every one departs from evil. The hearts of the righteous meditate faithfulness, but the mouth of the ungodly answers evil things. The ways of unrighteous men are acceptable with Jehovah, and the thought, and through them he has given their enemies to become friends. Elo-heem is far from the ungodly, but he hearkens to the prayers of the righteous. Better is a small receipts with righteousness than abundant fruits with unrighteousness. Let the heart of man think justly, that his steps may be rightly ordered by Elo-heem. The eye of that which is right rejoices the heart, and the good report fattens the bones. But he that rejects instructions hates himself, but he that minds reproof loves his soul. The fear of Jehovah is instruction and wisdom, and the highest honor will correspond therein. Proverbs 16, Septuagint. All the works of the humble man are manifested with the Elohim, but the ungodly shall perish in the evil day. Everyone that is proud in heart is unclean before Elohim, and he that is unjustly strikes hands with hands shall not be held guiltless. The beginning of a good way is to do justly, and it is more acceptable with Elohim than other sacrifices. He that seeks Jehovah shall find knowledge with righteousness, and they that rightly seek him shall find peace. All of the works of Jehovah are done with righteousness, and the ungodly man is kept from the evil day. There is an oracle upon the lips of a king, and his mouth shall not err in judgment. The poise of the balance is righteousness with Jehovah, and his works are righteous measures. An evildoer is an abomination to a king, for the throne of rule is established by righteousness. Righteous lips are acceptable to a king, and he loves right words. The anger of the king is measure of death, but the wise man will pacify him. The son of the king is in the light of life, and they that are in favor with him are of a cloud of later rain. The brood of wisdom is more to be chosen than gold, and the brood of prudence more than to be chosen than silver. The paths of life turn aside from evil, and the ways of righteousness are the length of life. He that receives instruction shall be in prosperity, and he that regards reproof shall be made wise. He that keeps his ways preserves his own soul, and he that loves his life will spare his mouth. Pride goes before destruction, and a folly before a fall. Better is a meek-spirited man with lowliness than one who divides spoil with the proud. He who is skillful in business finds good, but he that trusts in Elohim is most blessed. Men call the wise and understanding evil, but they are pleasing in the speech and shall hear more. Understanding is a fountain of life to its possessors, but the instructions of fools is evil. The heart of the wise will discern the things which proceed from his own mouth, and on his lips he will wear knowledge. Good words are honeycombs, and the sweetness thereof is the healing of the soul. There are ways that seem right to a man, but in the end of them looks to the depth of hell. A man who labors for himself, and divides and drives him on his own ruin. But the perverse bears destruction upon his own mouth. A foolish man digs up evil for himself, and treasures fire from his own lips. A perverse man spreads mischief, and will kindle a torch deceit with mischiefs, and he shall separate friends. The transgressor tries to ensnare friends, and leads them in ways that are not good. And the man that fixes his eyes devises perverse things, and marks out of his lips are all evil. He is a furnace of the wickedness. Old age is a crown of honor, but it is found in the ways of righteousness. A man slow to anger is better than a strong man, and he that governs his temper better than he that takes a city. All evils come upon an ungodly in their bosoms, but all righteousness comes from Jehovah. Proverbs 17, Septuagint. Better is a morsel with pleasure and peace, than a house full of many good things, and unjust sacrifices with strife. A wise servant shall rule over foolish masters, and shall divide portions amongst brethren. As silver and gold are tried in the furnace, so are choice hearts with Jehovah. A bad man hearkens to the tongue of transgressors, but the righteous man attends not to false lips. He that laughs at the poor provokes him that made him, and he that rejoices at the destruction of another shall be held guiltless. But he that has compassion shall find mercy. Children's children are the crown of old men, and their fathers are the glory of children. The faithful has the whole world full of wealth, but the faithless not even a farthing. Faithful lips will not suit a fool, nor lying lips a just man. Instructions is to them that use it a gracious reward, and whithersoever it may turn, it shall prosper. He that conceals injury seeks love, but he that hates to hide separates friends and kindred. A threat breaks down the heart of the wise man, but a fool through scourge understands not. Every bad man stirs up strife, but Jehovah will send out against him an unmerciful messenger. Care may befall a man of understanding, but fools will meditate. Whoso rewards evil for good, evil shall not be removed from his house. Rightful rule gives power to words, but sedition and strife precedes poverty. He that pronounces the unjust just, and the just unjust, is unclean and abominable with Elo-heem. Why has the fool wealth? For the senseless man will not be able to purchase wisdom. He that exalts his own house seeks ruin, and he that turns aside from instruction shall fall into mischief. Have thou a friend for every time. Let brethren be useful in distress, and for on this account they are. A foolish man applauds and rejoices over himself, as he also that becomes surety would make himself responsible for his own friends. A lover of sin rejoices and strives, and the hard-hearted man comes not in for good. A man of a changeful tongue will fall into mischief, and the heart of a fool is grief to its possessor. A father rejoices not over an uninstructed son, but a wise son gladdens his mother. A glad heart promotes health, but the bones of a sorrowful man dry up. The ways of man who unjustly receives gifts in his bosom do not prosper, and an ungodly man perverts the ways of righteousness. The countenance of wise men is sensible, but the eyes of a fool goes to the ends of the earth. A foolish son is the cause of anger to his father, and grief to her that bore him. It is not right to punish a righteous man, nor is it holy to plot against righteous princes. He that forbears to utter hard word is discreet, and a patient man is wise. Wisdom shall be imputed to the fool who asks after wisdom, and he who holds his peace shall seem to be sensible. John 17, OANT. And these things spoke Yeshua, and lifted his eyes unto heaven, and he said, My Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, that your Son may glorify you. Just as you have given him authority over all flesh, he will give eternal life to them, because you have given all things whatsoever unto him. But these things are eternal life, that they know you, for you alone are Elo-heem of truth, and Yeshua the Messiah, whom you have sent. I have glorified you in the earth. I have accomplished the work that you have given to me. Now glorify me, Father, in union with yourself, in that glory which I have in union with you before the universe was. I have revealed your name to the children of men, those whom have given me from the world. Yours they are, and you have given them to me, and they have kept your word. Now I know that everything whatsoever you have given to me is from your presence. For the words that you gave me I have given to them, and they have received them, and truly know that I have proceeded from unity with you. They have believed that you have sent me. And I pray over them. I was not praying over the world. I was praying for those whom you have given to me, for they are yours. And everything that is mine is yours, and yours is mine, and I am glorified in them. From now on I do not dwell in the world, but these are in the world, and I am coming to join you, Holy Father. Keep them in your name, that name which you have given me, so that they shall be one, just as we are one. When I was with them in the world, I kept them in your name. I have kept those who have given me, and no man among them has perished, except the son of destruction, that the scriptures should be fulfilled. But now I come to you, and I am speaking these things in the world, that my joy shall be complete in them. And I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, because they are not from the world, even as I am not from the world. It is not that I pray you would take them from the world, but that you would preserve them from the evil one. For they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. Father, sanctify them in your truth, because your word is truth. Just as you have sent me into the world, I have also sent them into the world. And I sanctify myself for them, that they may also be sanctified in the truth. Neither do I pray only for them, but also these who are trusting in me by their word, that they shall be one, just as you, my Father, are in me, and I am in you, so that they shall be one in us, that the world shall believe that you have sent me. And I have given them the glory that you have given me, so that they shall be one, just as we are one. I in them, you in me, so that they may be perfected as one, and so that the world may know that you have sent me, and that you have loved them just as you have also loved me. Father, I will that these whom you have given me, that where I am, they shall also be with me, that they shall see my glory which you have given me, because you have loved me before the foundations of the world. My righteous Father, although the world has not known you, I have known you, and these have known that you have sent me. And I have revealed to them your name, and I am revealing it, so that the love with which you have loved me shall be in them, and I shall be in them.
John 18. 1. Yeshua said these things and went forth with his disciples to the crossing of the torrent of Kedron. The place was a garden, where he and his disciples entered. 2. But Yehudah the traitor had also known that place, because Yeshua had met there many times with his disciples. 3. Therefore Yehudah led a company also from the presence of the chief priests and the Pharisees. He led the guards and came there with torches and lamps and weapons. 4. But Yeshua, because he knew all these things had come upon him, went out and said to them, Whom are you seeking? 5. They were saying to him, Yeshua the Nazarene. Yeshua said to them, I am the living Yehovah. But Yehudah the traitor was also standing with them. 6. And when Yeshua said to them, I am the living Yehovah, they went backward and fell to the ground. 7. Yeshua said again, Whom are you seeking? But they said, Yeshua the Nazarene. 8. Yeshua said to them, I have told you that I am the living Yehovah, and if you are seeking me, let these men go. 9. So that the saying might be fulfilled, Of those whom you have given me, I have not lost one. 10. But Shimeon Kepha had a sword on him, and he drew it, and struck the servant of the high priest, and took off his right ear, and the name of the servant was Malchah. 11. Yeshua said, Kepha, put the sword in its sheath. The cup that the Father has given me, shall I not drink it? 12. Then the company and a captain of 1,000, and guards of the Judeans, seized Yeshua, and bound him. 13. And they brought him to the presence of Hanan first, because he was father-in-law of Kepha, who was the high priest that year. 14. But it was Kepha who counseled the Jews that it was better that one man should die for the sake of the nation. 15. But Shimeon Kepha and one of the other disciples were coming after Yeshua, and that disciple had known the high priest, and he entered with Yeshua to the courtyard. 16. But Shimeon was standing outside near the gate, and that other disciple who knew the high priest went out, and spoke to her who kept the gate, and he brought in Shimeon. 17. But the maiden gatekeeper said to Shimeon, Are you also one of this man's disciples? He said to her, No. 18. And the servants and the guards were standing, and they were setting a fire to warm themselves because it was cold, but Shimeon was also standing with them and warming himself. 19. And the high priest asked Yeshua about his disciples and about his teaching. 20. And Yeshua said to him, I have spoken openly with the people, and at all times I have taught in the synagogue and in the temple, where all of the Judeans assemble, and I have spoken nothing in secret. 21. Why do you ask me? Ask those who heard what I spoke with them, behold, they know what I have said. 22. And when he had said these things, one of the guards, who was standing there, struck Yeshua on the cheek, and said to him, Do you answer thus to the high priest? 23. Yeshua answered and said to him, If I have spoken evil, testify of the evil, but if I have spoken correctly, why do you strike me? 24. But Hanan sent Yeshua, being bound, to the presence of Kepha the high priest. 25. And Shimeon Kepha was standing and warming himself, and they were saying to him, Are you also one of his disciples? And he denied and said, I am not. 26. And one of the servants of the high priest, near kin of him whose ear Shimeon had cut off, said, Did I not see you with him in the garden? 27. And Shimeon denied again, and in that hour a rooster crowed. 28. They brought Yeshua from the presence of Kepha to the praetorium, and it was dawn, and they did not enter the praetorium, lest they would be defiled, until they had eaten the Passover. 29. But Pilate went outside to their presence, and he said to them, What accusation do you have against this man? 30. And they answered, and they were saying to him, If he were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him to you. 31. Pilate said to them, Take him and judge him according to your law.
John 19, OANT. Then Pilate scourged Yeshua, and the soldiers wound a crown from thorns, placed it on his head, and clothed him in purple robe. And they were saying, Hail to you, King of Judeans! And they were hitting him on his cheeks. And Pilate went outside again, and he said to them, Behold, I bring forth to you outside that you may know that I find no occasions of complaint in him, not even one cause. And Yeshua went forth outside with a crown of thorns upon him, and the purple robe. And the Pilate said to them, Behold, here is the man. And then the chief priests and the guards saw him. They cried out, and they were saying, Crucify him, crucify him. And Pilate said to them, Take him and crucify him, for I do not find any fault with him. And the Judeans were saying to him, We have a law according to that which is written in our law. He is condemned to death because he made himself the son of Elo-heem. And then when Pilate heard this statement, he was even more afraid. And he entered the praetorium again, and he said to Yeshua, "Where are you from?" But Yeshua gave him no answer. Pilate said to him, "Are you not speaking with me? Do you not know that I have power to release you and have power to crucify you?" Yeshua said to him, "You have no power at all over me unless it has been given to you from above. Therefore, who has delivered me to you has a greater sin than yours." Because of this, Pilate wanted to release him, but the Judeans were crying out, "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend, for everyone who makes himself king is an adversary of Caesar." But when Pilate heard this statement, he brought Yeshua outside and sat down the judgment seats and placed that was called Reshifta de Kepha, but in Hebrew it is called Gepitha. It was the eve of Passover. It was about the 6th hour, and he said to the Judeans, "Behold, here is your king." But they were crying out, "Take him away, take him away, crucify him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests were saying, "We have no king but Caesar." Then he delivered him to them, and they would crucify him, and they led Yeshua and brought him out. And then he took up his cross to the place near Carapatha, but in Hebrew it is called Golgotha, where they crucified him, and 2 others with him, one on the side and one on the other side, and Yeshua in the center. And Pilate wrote a title and placed it on his cross, but it was written thus: "This is the Yeshua the Nazarene, the King of Judeans." And many of the Judeans read this tablet, because of this place in which Yeshua was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Aramaic and in Greek and in Latin. And the chief priests said to Pilate, "Do not write, 'He is the King of the Judeans,' but he said, 'I am a king of the Jews.'" Pilate said, "What I have written, I have written." But the soldiers, when they crucified Yeshua, took his garments, and they made 4 parts, a part to each of the soldiers. But his tunic was without a seam. It was woven entirely from the top. And they said to one another, "Let us not tear it, but let us cast lots for it, and who will be allowed to have it?" And the scripture was fulfilled, saying, "They divided my garments among them, and for my clothes they cast lots." And the soldiers therefore did things. But his mother and sisters of his mother and Mary, and who was of Cleopas, and Miriam Magdalene, were standing at the cross of Jesus. But Yeshua saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing, and he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." And he said to that disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour that disciple received her to himself. And after these things Yeshua knew that everything had been finished, and that the scripture may be fulfilled. He said, "I thirst." And the vessel had been set full of vinegar, but they filled a sponge from the vinegar and placed it on hyssop, and they put it near his mouth. And they took vinegar, and Yeshua said, "Behold, it is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up the spirit. But the Judeans, because it was evening, they were saying, "These bodies will not pass the night from their crosses, because the Sabbath day is approaching." For it was great Sabbath day. And they sought from Pilate to break the legs of those who had not been crucified, that they would be taken away. And the soldiers came, and they broke the legs of the first and of the other who was crucified with him. But when they came to Yeshua, they saw that he had died already, and he did not break his legs. One of the soldiers struck him on the side, and on his spear, and at once, and water issued forth. And he who saw testified, and his testimony is true, and he knows that he spoke the truth, so that you also may believe. For these things happened that the scriptures may be fulfilled, that say, "Not a bone of him will be broken." Another scripture again that says, "They shall gaze upon him whom they pierced through." After these things, Joseph, who was from Ramath, sought from Pilate, because he was a disciple of Yeshua, and it was secretly, from fear of the Judeans, that he might take the body of Yeshua. And Pilate gave him permission, and he came and took away the body of Yeshua. And Nicodemus also came, who had come before to Yeshua by night, and he brought with him spices of myrrh, and of aloes, about 100 pounds. And they took away the body of Yeshua, and wrapped it in linen and sweet spices, just as the customs of the Judeans was for burying. And there was in that place where Yeshua had been crucified a garden, and in that garden a new tomb which man had not been laid. And they laid Yeshua there, because the Sabbath was approaching, and because the tomb was nearby. John 20, OANT. But on that day of the first of the week, in the early morning, while it was dark, Miriam Magdalene came to the tomb, and she saw the stone that had been removed from the tomb. And she ran to Shimon Kepha, and to the other disciples whom Yeshua had loved. And she said to them, They have taken him away, our Elo-heem, from the tomb, and I don't know where they laid him. And Simeon went out, and the other disciple, and they came to the tomb, and they were both running together. But the disciple in front of Simeon, and he came first to the tomb. And he looked, gazing at the linens, where they were lying, but he did not enter. Then Simeon came after him, and entered the tomb, gazing at the linens, where they were lying. And a grave cloth, which has been bound about his head, not with the linens, but as it was wrapped, and set on the side in one place. Then the other disciples entered, who came first to the tomb, and he started, and he believed. But they had not yet known from the Scriptures that he was going to rise from the dead. And those disciples departed again to their place. But Miriam was standing at the tomb, and was weeping, and while weeping she looked inside the tomb. And she saw two angels in white sitting, one at his pillow, and one at his foot, where the body of Yeshua had been laid. And they saying to her, Woman, why are you weeping? And she said to them, They have taken away my Elo-heem, and I don't know where they have laid him. And she said this, and turned, and saw Yeshua standing, and she did not know that he was Yeshua. And Yeshua said to her, Woman, why are you weeping? And whom are you seeking? But she thought he was the gardener, and he said to him, Sir, if you have taken him, tell me where you have laid him, and I will go and take him away. Yeshua said to her, Miriam. And she turned and said to him in Hebrew, Rabduli, which means teacher. Yeshua said to her, Don't cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but join my brothers, and say to them that I sent to join my Father and your Father, my YEHOVAH and your YEHOVAH. And Mary Magdalene came and announced to the disciples, I have seen our Elo-heem, and that he had said these things to her. But when it was evening of the first day of the week, and the doors were barred where disciples were staying, because of fear of the Judeans, Yeshua came and stood in their midst, and said to them, Peace be with you. And he said this, and he showed them his hands and his side, and the disciples rejoiced because they saw our Elo-heem. But Yeshua said to them again, Peace be with you. Just as my Father has sent me, I am also sending you. When he had said these things, he breathed upon them and said to them, Receive the Spirit of holiness. If you will forgive a man's sins, they will be forgiven him. And if you hold a man, they will be held. But Thoma, one of the 12, who is the twin, he was not there when Yeshua came. And the disciples were saying to him, We have seen our Elo-heem. And he said to him, Unless I see his hands and place of the nails, and I shall put my fingers in them, and reach my hand into his side, I will not believe. And after 8 days, again the disciples were inside, and Thoma was with them. And Yeshua came when the door was barred. He stood in the center, and he said to them, Peace be with you. And he said, Thoma, put your finger here, and behold my hands, and put your hand, and reach into my side, and do not be an unbeliever, but a believer. And Thomas answered and said to him, My Elo-heem and my YEHOVAH. Yeshua said to him, Now that you've seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen me and have believed. But Yeshua did many signs before the disciples, which are not written in the Scriptures. But these things are also written that you may believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of Jehovah. And when you believe, you shall also have eternal life in his name. John 21, OANT. After these things Yeshua showed himself to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he appeared thus. And there were together Simeon, Kepha, and Thomas, who is called the twin, and Nathanael, who was the Quanton of Galilee, and the son of Zebedee, and the 2 others of the disciples. Simeon Kepha said to them, I am going to catch fish. They were saying to him, We are also coming with you. And they went out and embarked the ship, and that night they caught nothing. But when it was dawn, Yeshua stood on the side of the sea, and the disciples did not know that it was Yeshua. Yeshua said to them, "Lads, do you have anything to eat?" And they said to him, "No." He said to them, "Throw your net to the right side of the ship, and you will find." And they cast, and they could not haul in the net, for the multitude of fish that was caught. And the disciple of whom Yeshua had great affection said to Kepha, "This is our Elo-heem." But Simeon, when he heard that he was our Elo-heem, he took his tunic, girding his loins, because he was naked, and he threw himself in the sea to come to Yeshua. But the other disciples came into the boat, for they were not very far from the land, but the 200 cubits, and they were dragging the net with fish. But when they came up to the land, they saw burning coals, which had been set, and fish were lying on them, and bread. And Yeshua said to them, "Bring some of those fish that you have caught just now." And Simeon Kepha came up and dragged the net to the land, and it was filled with 153 great fish. And with all this weight, the net was not ripped. And Yeshua said to them, "Come, have breakfast." But none of the disciples dared ask him who he was, for they knew that he was our Elo-heem. But Yeshua came near and took the bread and the fish and gave to them. This was the third time Yeshua appeared to his disciples after he had risen from the tomb. After they had breakfast, Yeshua said to Simeon Kepha, "Simeon, Bar-Yonah, do you love me more than these things?" And he said to him, "Yes, my Elo-heem, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Shepherd my lambs for me." He said to him again, the second time, "Simeon Bar-Yonah, do you love me?" And he said to him, "Yes, my Elo-heem, you know that I love you." Yeshua said to him, "Shepherd my sheep for me." And he said a third time, "Simeon Bar-Yonah, do you love me?" And Kepha was saddened that he said to him a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "My Elo-heem, you discern everything. You know that I love you." Yeshua said to him, "Shepherd my ewes for me." Amen, I tell you that when you were young, you were girded your loins, and you were walking where you wanted. But when you are old, you shall reach out your hands, and others will gird your loins for you, and shall escort you to where you do not want. But he said this to show them by death he was going to glorify YEHOVAH. And after he had these things, he said to him, "Come after me." And Simeon Kepha turned around and saw the disciple whom Yeshua had loved, who had come after him, who had lain at supper on the breast of Yeshua, and said, "My Elo-heem, who is he that shall betray you?" When Kepha saw this one, he said to Yeshua, "And what of this man, my Elo-heem?" Yeshua said to him, "If I want this one to remain until I come to you, what is it to you? You come after me." And this saying went forth amongst the brethren, that this disciple could not die. But Yeshua had not said that he would not die, but, "If I want this one to remain until I come to you, what is it to you?" It is the disciple who testified about all these things, and he wrote them, and we know that his testimony is true. There are also many other things that Yeshua did which were written in each one. I suppose the world would not be insufficient for the books that would be written.
Revelation 17 to 22.
Revelation 17. 1. And one of the 7 angels who had with them the 7 vessels, came and spoke with me, saying, "Follow me, I shall show you the judgment of the harlot, who sits on many waters." 2. For the kings of the earth committed fornication with her, and all earth dwellers are drunk with the wine of her fornication. 3. And he brought me to the wilderness in the spirit, and I saw a woman who sat on a blood-red beast full of blasphemous names, which had 7 heads and 10 horns. 4. And the woman was wearing purple and scarlet gilt with gold and precious stones and pearls, and had a cup of gold in her hand, and it was full of abominations and the filth of her fornication. 5. And upon her forehead was written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the filth of the earth. 6. And I saw the woman who was drunk with the blood of the holy ones and with the blood of the witnesses of Yeshua, and I was stunned with a great astonishment when I saw her. 7. And the angel said to me, Why are you stunned? I shall tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that bears her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. 8. The beast which you saw existed and is not, and is about to come up from the sea, and is going to destruction. And the inhabitants on earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast which was, and is not, and is approaching. 9. Here is the meaning for one having wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, upon which the woman sits. 10. And there are 7 kings, 5 have fallen and 1 is, and there is another not yet come, and when he comes, a little remaining time is given to him. 11. And the dragon, and the beast which it brought and is not, also is the 8th, and is of the 7, and is going to destruction. 12. And the 10 horns of the beast are 10 kings, whose kingdoms they have not yet received, but take authority as kings for 1 hour with the beast. 13. These have one will, and their power and authority they give to the beast. 14. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, because he is Elo-heem of power and the King of kings, and because his people are called, chosen, and faithful. 15. And he said to me, the waters that you saw, upon which the harlot sat, are the nations, multitudes, peoples, and languages. 16. And the 10 horns that you saw on the beast will hate the harlot, and will make her desolate and naked, and will devour her flesh, and will burn her in fire. 17. For YEHOVAH gave into their hearts to perform his pleasure, and to do their one purpose, and will give their kingdom to that beast until the words of YEHOVAH are fulfilled. 18. And the woman which you saw is that great city, which has rule over the kings of the earth.
Revelations 18. OENT. And after these things I saw another angel from heaven, and who had great authority, and the earth was brightened by his glory. And he shouted with a great voice, Fallen, fallen, Babylon the Great, and it is become the abode of demons, and a prison to every impure and detestable spirit, because she mixed of the wine of her fornications for all the nations. And the kings of the earth committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich by the power of her mad infatuation. And I heard another voice from heaven, and said, Come out of within her, my people, lest you share in her sins, that you would not receive from her plagues, because the sins in her have touched heaven, and Jehovah has called her evil to mind. Pay her just as she is also paid, and give her double for her deeds. In the cup which she has mixed her a double. Because of that which she has glorified and exalted herself, give such suffering and sorrow. And she said in her heart, I sit as a queen, and I am not a widow, and I shall not see sorrow. Because of this, in one day, there will come upon her plagues, death, sorrow, and starvation, and she will burn with fire, because Elohim Jehovah is powerful, who judges her. And the kings of the earth who committed fornication with her, and exalted themselves, will weep and wail concerning her, when they see the smoke of her burning. And as they stand opposite of her punishment, and they shall say, Woe, 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 the great city Babylon, the mighty cry, for 1 hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth will weep and grieve over her, and there is no one buying her cargo again. Cargo of gold, silver, and precious stones, of pearls, fine linen, purple, of silk, scarlet, and very fragrant wood, and every ivory vessel, every precious wooden vessel, and brass, iron, and marble, cinnamon, spices, ornaments, frankincense, wine, oil, white flour, sheep, horses, chariots, and the bodies and the souls of children of men. And your own pleasant fruits have departed from you, and everything luxurious and splendid is gone from you, and you will not see them again. And the merchants of these things, which grew rich by her, will not find them, and they will stand opposite from her punishment, weeping and lamenting, and saying, Alas, alas, the great city, that wore fine linen, and purple and scarlet, gilt in gold, precious stones, and pearls. For the wealth is lost in 1 hour. And in this way also every ship navigator, everyone traveling in a ship to places, and the ship's captains, and everyone who does business at sea stood from a distance. And they lamented her when they saw the smoke of her burning, and they were saying, Who is like the great city? And they cast earth upon their heads, and shouted, and wept, and lamented. And they were saying, Alas, alas, great city, by which those who had ships in the sea grew rich from her magnificence, which is destroyed in 1 hour. Rejoice over her, O heaven, O holy ones, apostles and prophets, because Jehovah has executed your judgment upon her. And one of the angels took a mighty stone, great as a millstone, cast it into the sea, and said, In this way, with violence, Babylon the great city will be thrown down, and it will not exist again. And the sound of stringed instruments and trumpets, and the various singers and shouting, will not be heard in you again, and the light of a lamp will not appear in you again, and the voice of the groom and the voice of the bride will not be heard in you again, because your merchants have been great ones of the earth, and for by your sorceries you deceived all nations, and by her was found the body of the prophets and holy men who were murdered on earth. Revelation 19, OANT. And after these things I heard a great sound of many multitudes in heaven saying, Hallelujah, redemption, glory and power to our Yehovah. For this judgments are true and just, because he has judged the great whore, who corrupted the earth with her whoredom, and he has required the blood of the servants from her hand. Again he said, Hallelujah, and her smoke ascends to the eternity of eternities. And the 24 elders and 4 beasts fell down, worship. Our Elo-heem sits on the throne, and they were saying, Amen, Hallelujah. And there were a voice from the throne that said, Praise our Elo-heem, all his servants and worshippers of his, all of them, small and great. And I heard a sound like many multitudes, like the sound of many waters, and like the sound of mighty thunders, saying, Hallelujah, for Yehovah our Elo-heem, Yehovah mighty reigns. We rejoice and celebrate. We give him glory, because the wedding of the Lamb has come, and the bride has prepared herself. And it was given to her to wear fine linen, pure and bright. For the fine linen is the uprightness of the holy ones. And they said to me, Write, blessed are those who are called to the wedding supper of the Lamb. And one said to me, These are the true words of Elo-heem. And I fell before his feet and worshipped him. And he said to me, No, I am not your fellow servant, and of your brothers who have the testimony of Yeshua. Worship Yehovah. Rather, for the testimony of Yeshua is true of prophecy. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. And he who sat upon it is called trustworthy and true. And his righteousness he judges and makes war. And his eyes were like flames of fire. Many diadems were upon his head, and he had the names written. And no one knew but he alone. And he wore a garment soaked with blood, and his name was called the Word of. The armies of heaven were joined to him on white horses, and were wearing white linen and pure. Sharp swords came out of their mouths, by which they will kill the nations. And he will shepherd them with a rod of iron, and he will tread the winepress of the wrath of Almighty Elohim. And he has on his garment over his thigh the name written, the King of Kings, Elohim, Yehovah of Power. And I saw another angel standing in the sun, and crying with a loud voice. And he said to the birds flying in the midst of the sky, Come, gather to the great supper of Elohim, and to eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains of thousands, and the flesh of warriors, and the flesh of horses, and of those sitting upon them, and the flesh of freemen and servants, and small and great. And I saw the beast of its army, and the kings of this earth, and their soldiers, who gathered to make war with him that sat upon the horse, and his soldiers. And the beast was captured, and the false prophet with it, who did signs before it, by which he seduced those who received the mark of the beast. Those who worshipped its image both went down and were cast in the lake of fire that burns also with brimstone. But the rest were killed with the sword by him who sat on the horse, by that which proceeds from his mouth, and all birds of prey were filled with their flesh. Revelations 20, OANT. And I saw another angel from heaven, who had with him the key of the abyss, and a great chain in his hand. And he seized the dragon, an ancient serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he cast him into the abyss, and shut and sealed the top, so that he would not again seduce all the nations. After these things it was granted a release for a little season. I saw seats, and they sat upon them. The judgment was given them, and these souls were cut off for the testimony of Yeshua and the word of Yehovah. And because they did not worship the beast, neither its image, nor receive a mark between their eyes, or on their hands, they lived and reigned with the Messiah for 1,000 years. And this is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he. Whoever has part in the first resurrection and the second death has no authority over these, but they shall be priests of Yehovah and the Messiah, and they shall reign with him 1,000 years. And whenever 1,000 years are finished, Satan will be released from his imprisonment. And he will go forth to seduce all the nations in the 4 corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them to war, those whose number is the sand of the sea. And they went to war upon the open place in the earth, and surrounded the city of the camp of the holy people and of the beloved city. The fire descended from heaven, from Jehovah, and consumed them. Their seducer, the devil, was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. And they shall be tormented day and night, for the eternity of eternities. And I saw a great white throne, and him sitting on top of it, from whose face earth, heaven fled away, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, who stood before the throne. Scrolls were opened, and another scroll was opened, which is the judgment, and the dead were judged for those things that were written in the scrolls, according to their works. And the sea yielded up the dead that were in it, and death and Sheol yielded the dead which were with them. And they judged, one by one, according to their works. And death and Sheol were cast in the lake of fire, which is the second death. And whoever was not found inscribed in the book of life was cast in the lake of fire.
Revelation 21. 1. And I saw new heavens and a new earth, for the former heavens and the former earth had departed, and the sea was no more. 2. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, descending from heaven from beside YEHOVAH, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. 3. And I heard a great voice from heaven that said, Behold, the tabernacle of YEHOVAH is with the children of men, and he dwells with them, and they shall be his people, and the same YEHOVAH is with them, and shall be their YEHOVAH. 4. And he shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and from now on there shall not be death, neither grieving, nor clamor, neither shall there be disease again, for his sake. 5. And I walked, and he who sat on the throne said to me, Behold, I make all things new. And he said to me, Write, these words are trustworthy and true. 6. And he said to me, They are done. I am Alap, and I am Tau, the source, and the fulfillment. I shall give to the thirsty one from the fountain of the water of life, without charge. 7. And he who is victorious shall inherit these things, and I shall be his YEHOVAH, and he will be my son. 8. But to the timid, the unbelievers, the evil, the defiled, murderers, sorcerers, fornicators, idol worshippers, and all liars, their part is in the burning lake of fire and brimstone, which is the second death. 9. And one of the 7 angels who had with them the 7 vessels full of the 7 last plagues, came, and he spoke with me, saying, Come, I shall show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. 10. And he carried me in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and he showed me the holy city Jerusalem, coming down from heaven from the presence of YEHOVAH. 11. And it had the glory of YEHOVAH, and its light was as the likeness of precious stones, like jasper red quartz, as the appearance of crystal. 12. And it had a wall, great and high, and it had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names written which are the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. 13. From the east, 3 gates, from the north, 3 gates, and from the south, 3 gates, and from the west, 3 gates. 14. And the wall of the city has 12 foundations, and on them, the 12 names of the apostles of the Son. 15. And he who spoke with me had with him a measuring reed of gold to measure the city and its wall. 16. And the city was laid out 4-sided, and its length like its width. And he measured the city with the reed, with 12,000 stadia its length, its width and its height are equal. 17. And he measured its wall 144 cubits by the measure of a man, that is, of the angel. 18. The building of the wall was jasper quartz, and the city was of pure gold, in the likeness of pure glass. 19. And the foundation of the wall of the city is adorned with precious stones, and the first foundation, jasper red blue yellow quartz, and the second, sapphire, and the third, white chalcedony, and the fourth, emerald. 20. And the fifth, red and white sardius and banded onyx, and the sixth, red and white sardius, and the seventh, goldstone, and the eighth, beryl, and the ninth, topaz, and the 10th, green and gold chrysoprasus, the 11th, dark blue jacinth, the 12th, amethyst. 21, and 12 gates, and 12 pearls, one to each, and every one of the gates was of one pearl, but the street of the city of pure gold, as if there was glass in it. 22, and I saw no temple in it, for Elo-heem YEHOVAH, Jehovah Almighty, he is its temple. 23, and the Lamb and the city do not need the sun or the moon to illuminate it, for the glory of Jehovah illuminates it, and the Lamb is its lamp. 24. And the nations walk in its light, and the kings of the earth bring glory to it. 25. And its gates shall not be shut by day, for there shall be no night there. 26. And they shall bring to it the glory and honor of the nations. 27. There shall not be anything defiled there, or one who makes defilement or lies, but only those who are written in the book of the Lamb. Revelation 22. 1. And he showed me a river of the water of life, pure and clear as crystal, and it went out from the throne of Jehovah and of the Lamb. 2. And in the center of the street on this side and on that, upon the river, the tree of life which produces 12 fruits, and every month it gives its fruits and its leaves for the healing of the peoples. 3. And no curse shall be there, and the throne of Jehovah and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. 4. And they shall see his face, and his name shall be upon their foreheads. 5. And there shall be no night there, and neither will they need lights, lamps, or the light of the sun, because Elo-heem YEHOVAH Jehovah gives them light, and he is their king for the eternity of eternities. 6. And he said to me, these words are trustworthy and true, and Elo-heem YEHOVAH, Jehovah of the spirit of the holy prophets, has sent his angel to show his servants what is granted to happen soon. 7. And behold, I come soon. Blessed is he who keeps the words of the prophecy of this book. 8. I am Yohanan, who saw and heard these things. And when I saw and heard, I fell to worship before the feet of the angel who was showing me these things. 9. And he said to me, Seer, no. I am your fellow servant and of your brothers the prophets and of those who observe these words of this book. Worship Jehovah. 10. And he said to me, do not seal the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. 11. And he who does evil will do evil again, he who is foul again will be polluted, the righteous again will do righteousness, and the holy will again be hallowed. 12. Behold, I come at once, and my reward is with me, and I shall give to every person according to his work. 13. I am Alap and I am Tau, the first and the last, the origin and the fulfillment. 14. Blessings to those who are doing his commandments, their authority shall be over the tree of life, and they shall enter the city by the gates. 15. And outside are fornicators, murderers, idol worshippers, the defiled, sorcerers, and all seers and workers of lies. 16. I, Yeshua, have sent my angel to testify these things among you before the assemblies. I am the living YEHOVAH, the root and the offspring of David, and his companion, and the bright morning star. 17. And the Spirit and the bride are saying, Come, and let him who hears say, Come, and let him who thirsts come and take the water of life without charge. 18. I testify to everyone who hears the word of the prophecy of this book, whoever will place upon these things, Jehovah shall place upon him the plagues that are written in this book. 19. And whoever subtracts from the words of the scripture of this prophecy, Jehovah shall subtract his part from the tree of life and from the holy city, those things which are written in this book. 20. And when he testified these things, he said, Yes, I am coming soon. Come, Elo-heem YEHOVAH Yeshua. 21. The grace of our Elo-heem, Yeshua the Messiah be with all of his holy ones. Amen.